Hi, I'm Missy with On William Street, and this week we are bringing you a really fun home decor project for Valentine's Day. I love texture when it comes to fabrics, when it comes to quilts, everything. I love having a lot of texture, and this is a fun little texture project that you can do with fabric scraps or any colors that you want to just bring in that little bit of a fun little twist and something a little bit different in your decor. So we are going to do a 14-inch pillow for this project, and we will have all of the instructions as far as what you need to cut in our blog post as well as throughout this video tutorial. So the fabric that you're going to need for this is for our back. We're going to need two pieces that are about 12 by 15 inches. So if you don't want as big of a fold over in the back, you can go a little shorter than the 12 inches, but this is going to give you plenty of room with that fold over envelope backing. And then we also have a piece of white and our batting that are 16 inches square that we're going to use. And then for the front of our pillow, we've got 18 strips that are 1.5 inches by 16 inches. And then also again, 18 strips of our red and our pink that are 1.5 by 16 inches long. So we're gonna take our pink and our red strips and we're going to sew them together, just all the way down, doing a 1/4 inch seam all the way down. And it's going to end up giving us these nice little strips. With our seam in our back, we're gonna go ahead and iron that seam to one side, and then we're going to iron it flat. So we have that seam hidden in the middle, and then we can go ahead and use these to attach to our white. So I've finished most of them already, but I'm going to go ahead and sew these last few together so you can see exactly how we're doing this. So we have our red and our pink, and it doesn't really matter which one's on top because you're just sewing the two strips together. So we'll go ahead and just sew our 1/4 inch seam all the way down. Just make sure they're lined up nicely as you go. And the nice thing about this is I can go ahead and just pull the next one over, and I don't even really need to clip in between those seams, so you can just kind of run them all through together. So we're going to go ahead, give this a nice press to just start that. Keep that seam nice and straight. And then fold this over. And again, it doesn't really matter which direction you're pressing to because you're going to end up pressing that seam to the inside of both of them. So try to keep it nice and flat. And then flip it over. Actually, it's going to be easier if I go this way. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and press that so that that seam is right there at the bottom. Basically want this to look like one piece of fabric, but pink on one side and red on the other. So I like to use my fingers to really kind of wiggle that to get that seam right there on the edge. Okay, and we'll go ahead and get the rest of them finished this way. Now to sew this pillow top together so we get all that really fun quilty texture in this. So the main thing is we want to make sure that we're making sure that we're keeping the same color going this direction all the way. So we want to fold this over here, and I like to use a few pins just to kind of help hold this in place. You're going to take that and put it on top of one of your white strips. So match that up right there, and then you're going to put another white strip right there on the top. And then just stick a pin in there. And then just go down just to make sure that things are lining up correctly. Since you're really putting 4 layers of fabric on top of each other, we want to make sure that it stays lined up nicely for us. And then we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way down this strip with those 4 pieces of fabric together. And just watch it and keep it lined up as you go. Okay, so we're done with our first strip, and when we fold this over and iron it, we're going to have that red on top. And now we want to go ahead and add our next strip in. And again, we want to make sure, I'm not going to do any ironing yet because it's actually easier to do the ironing after all of this is put together. So we're going to follow along just like we did before. We're going to put our next strip in here with the pink side up, and then another white strip on top. Line them all up, add a pin, and we're just going to continue to do this all the way down until we have used all of our strips. Now to sew this pillow top together so we get all that really fun quilty texture in this. So the main thing is we want to make sure that we're making sure that we're keeping the same color going this direction all the way. So we want to fold this over here, and I like to use a few pins just to kind of help hold this in place. You're going to take that and put it on top of one of your white strips. So match that up right there, and then you're going to put another white strip right there on the top. And then just stick a pin in there. And then just go down just to make sure that things are lining up correctly. Since you're really putting 4 layers of fabric on top of each other, we want to make sure that it stays lined up nicely for us. And then we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way down this strip with those 4 pieces of fabric together. And just watch it and keep it lined up as you go. Okay, so we're done with our first strip, and when we fold this over and iron it, we're going to have that red on top. And now we want to go ahead and add our next strip in. And again, we want to make sure, I'm not going to do any ironing yet because it's actually easier to do the ironing after all of this is put together. So we're going to follow along just like we did before. We're going to put our next strip in here with the pink side up, and then another white strip on top. Line them all up, add a pin, and we're just going to continue to do this all the way down until we have used all of our strips. Okay, now that we've got all of our strips put in here, we can go ahead and start ironing. So what we're going to want to do, because I want the red to be on top, if you want the pink to be on top, obviously you could just do it the opposite direction. So underneath this little seam, I want to iron that up, and I want to make sure that that red is ironing down. So as you kind of go along, it's a lot of using your fingers, but make sure you don't burn your fingers as you're working your way down along this. And I'm going to do little sections all the way down and then move down to the next section. And use my fingers underneath to make sure that that is pointing up. And then also I'll flip it around and put the iron on the back as well, which will help make sure that those seams are pointed the direction that I want them to be. So just take your time on this, and like I said, sections at a time, and don't burn your fingers. Now that we've got it all ironed, going the direction with the reds on the top, now we can go ahead and add that really fun quilty texture to it with so that we can see the pinks as well. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is I want to fold this in half so I can get a rough idea of the center. And it doesn't have to be exact, but just kind of a general center for this. And I'm going to go ahead and just stick a pin there just to help me keep in mind where that center is. And now we actually want to go ahead and add our batting and our back to this as well. So I've got our back and our batting square. I'm going to add this to the top of it. And don't worry about this being exact. It is bigger than what our final pillow is going to be. We did that on purpose so that we can trim things down, especially after this kind of bunches up a little bit with this texture. But just line that up all the way down. You'll also notice that there is longer length in here than what the pillow is. Again, I just wanted to make sure that I had plenty to do any trimming or anything afterwards as needed. So you could just do less rows if you would like to, if you don't think that you need to have the same amount for trimming. Okay, so we have our center, and we're going to, you definitely want to start in the center. Don't start on the edges for this, but we're going to start in our center, and we're going to sew all the way down. And then just try to keep that as even as you can. If you really want to make sure that it's even all the way down, you can use a marking pen, but you won't really notice a big difference if it's off by just a little bit. And then just try to keep our seams underneath pointing up as we're sewing this down. Okay, now we're going to add our first twist into the pillow. So to do that, we'll want to measure over, and you can make your twist bigger or smaller, whichever you prefer, but I'm going to go ahead and measure over about 3 inches is where I'm going to start my first twist. So right about here. So this is where you're going to fold that down instead. So I'll actually put a pin up here so I can see where my twist starts. You're going to have to just really hold that fabric in place as you sew. And just take it slow. This one is not a race. And again, on this, it doesn't have to be exactly the 3 inches or the same all the way over. You're not going to really notice a little bit of a difference. If you really want to make sure that you're doing it straight all the way over, you can use a marking pen or something to measure that from top to bottom. I kind of eyeball it. Okay, so we have our first twist in there, and then we're going to go ahead and just continue that both sides. But you always want to make sure that you start in the middle, because if you start the middle and an outside, and twisting these up is going to be a lot more difficult. If you start in the middle, it just makes it much easier to twist these back and forth. So we'll go ahead and finish sewing. Okay, now that our front is all complete and ready to go, we need to get our back ready. So we're going to take our two pieces, and like I said, we're going to do an envelope back. So it's really simple, don't have to have a zipper or anything. So we're going to want to fold these over. You want to make sure that you're on the 12-inch side when you're folding this. So go ahead and fold it over about an inch, and then fold that in so that you've got a nice good 1/2 inch seam in there. You can actually go ahead and take this over to the iron and iron that inch all the way down, so that when you take it over to your sewing machine, you can easily fold over that 1/2 inch, and it'll give you a nice flat seam. So I'm going to iron that down, and then go ahead and just give a seam on both of our back pieces, and again along that 12-inch side, and then we will get everything trimmed up and sew our pillow together. Okay, so now we need to trim the front of our pillow. So first I want to kind of go through it and take off this extra. We're going to line this up. This is a 15-inch ruler, which is perfect, because when you have a 14-inch pillow, a 15-inch square is exactly what you need to be able to give you a 1/2 inch seam on all 4 sides. So we're going to, and this is with, you've got some bulk in here, so just take your time. You might have to go over it a couple of times to get through all of those layers. The last one does not want to cut. There we go. Okay, so now I want to flip over, because this one's going to be along the bottom, so you're not really going to see, they're going to be in the seam, so it's okay that you cut those off. But the rest of them, I want to make sure that I'm not cutting the top pieces off, because they're not going to necessarily be in the seam as much along these bottom edges. So I want to make sure that I keep those as intact as possible. Okay, and then your sides really shouldn't be off by that much, because we did start off with 16 inches, but because of the way that you're kind of bringing some of that bulk in as you're sewing, you're not really going to be at 16 inches anymore. You're going to be closer to that 15, so you just want to make sure that you're squaring things up, because it does shift a little bit as you're sewing all of those ribbons together. Do have just a touch more on this side. I want to make sure it's squared up. Okay. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our back pieces. And what you're going to do is you're going to put them on the front of the pillow, because we want these obviously be on the inside. Some pins is going to come in handy as you're sewing this, just because, like I said, you've got quite a bit of bulk in that front. And then to do your envelope enclosure, you're going to just set the other one on top of it. So we have our seam here and our seam here underneath. And then we're just going to go ahead and we're going to sew all the way around this pillow using a 1/2 inch seam. And then after you do that, if you would like to, just to add in some extra durability, you can go ahead and do a zigzag seam just to the outside of that seam as well. We're just going to do a straight seam on this one because I'll do the zigzag seam on my machine. Kimmy's machine just does straight seam only. So we're going to go ahead and get this all sewn around, and then we'll show you what the pillow looks like. Our Valentine pillow is complete. We've got it stuffed. One thing when you're stuffing this, as you're going with your corners, I always like to just kind of snip the corners a little bit on an angle. That's going to help them unfold a little easier, and then use your finger to really put in there so you get those nice points on each of your corners. And this gives you a really fun texture pillow for Valentine's. You can use other colors and use for any other holiday. I love having texture, and it's really just going to add some really fun texture to your house and your holiday decor. So make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook and like our video so that you don't miss anything that we're working on. We've got lots of things planned this year, and we will see you next week.